Let me in Chinese to introduce you quickly, and then we can proceed the interview. Hello， 你哋大家好，我依家咧今日咧就請咗我嘅好有信用嘅律師，係關於買房地產嘅律師喺英國嘅，同我哋講解咧喺英國買房地產有啲乜嘢注意嘅項目。咁我哋咧依家從頭開始咧就講英文嘅啦，陣間咧我會係將啲翻譯咧係翻譯咗中文俾你睇啦。咁咧依家就開片。Hi Charles, nice to speak to you. And
hello Cici, nice to speak to you.
For years, and you haven't changed a single bit. As you know,
what have you?
And I have a YouTube channel, and we recently have a lot of requests about what's going on with the English politics that we are witnessing right now. So I don't know you're aware that like in Hong Kong we are having quite a lot of turmoil politically. So a lot of Hong Kong people are very eager to migrate to a different country, and UK Boris Johnson had opened his arms to welcome us, which is sort of a good news, I think.
I'm very pleased.
Yeah, so I would like to interview you several things about as you are an expert in property purchasing and legal rights and things like that. And a lot of people don't actually know. So I have a list of questions to ask. So first of all, what is your opinion? I understand that you're not an immigration lawyer, but there's so many, you know, as I was contacting you before, like the information out there is not very clear about the rights of us going to the UK to reside. So I just sort of want to shed some light on what your thoughts are.
Of course. Well, I'm afraid it is a habit of UK governments to make political announcements without releasing any detail until much later on. And to be honest, I'm afraid the main reason for this is usually because they haven't actually decided what the detail will be. And they wish to run the various options by opinion polls. As you can tell, I have no intention of ever becoming a politician, or I'd not be saying these things. And then they can tailor, you know, the final decisions according to what they believe will be most popular amongst the British electorate. So we've had this fantastic announcement. I have looked on the UK Home Office website to see what the detail might be. And it states there that the detail will be announced in the coming months. So for the moment, I'm afraid we just don't know. We're recording this interview at the beginning of July. I would hope that by August, September, maybe we'll have a better idea. Now, of course, this doesn't affect the existing ability of the holders of British nationals' overseas passports, or BNO passports for short, to come to the UK without a visa and to stay for 6 months.
So my last question was, what is your view on like the Boris Johnson move? Like what our Prime Minister want us to achieve by inviting Hong Kong people to come, and what is the requirement? Do you think, obviously we don't know, and what is the possible requirement that Hong Kong officials needed to have?
I think that although a Conservative government would not normally encourage immigration, these are special circumstances because of the economic fallout from the coronavirus pandemic. And many millions of people in the UK are going to be forced out of their jobs when the government support for their employers comes to an end, which they have said will be at the beginning of October. And also from the beginning of August, they're going to be winding down the support scheme for businesses. So I think the unemployment rate could rise from then. In consequence, the economy is going to go into, frankly, a nosedive in the next few months. And I believe that part of the reasoning behind this announcement is that the government is hoping very much that Hong Kong people, who are very well known for their hard work ethic and efficiency and ability to create wealth, will come over and save the British economy. So I do think it's a very serious proposition he's making.
Oh, wow. So it's kind of positive. And I think they're
yes, absolutely.
Definitely encouraging Hong Kong people to set business.
I think it possibly marks a hopeful break from the usual mold of making announcements and then letting people down with the detail afterwards. Hopefully this will be the reverse.
And hopefully it doesn't take like 3 years like Brexit.
I couldn't possibly comment.
We still don't know what's happening right now. Are we in the
Oh,
UK
and
or
in fact, it's been 4 years now, 4 years.
4 years. Oh yeah. It's
2016.
Oh, just, yeah.
Time passes.
It's quite bleak. Right, today our topic is how to buy a property in the UK. Because it seems very common to me, the knowledge, but to a Hong Kong person, I want to start from ground zero, the basic understanding of how to buy a property. So my first question is, what is the process of buying a property without a mortgage? And how long does it take?
Right, 2 separate questions. Firstly, whether or not you have a mortgage makes no difference to the length of time it will take you to buy your property.
Really?
That is dependent on other factors. It makes it a bit simpler.
What?
It makes it simpler. It doesn't necessarily make it shorter.
What?
And the reason is that although you will not have to go and get a mortgage offer, the length of time it takes from an offer to be accepted to completion in the UK is dependent on many other factors, such as how long the chain is, whether the person you are buying from needs to buy somewhere else, and whether they need to buy from someone else, etc.,
Sorry, can I just interrupt you right now? Hong Kong people will not know what is a chain.
Okay, so a chain of transactions can arise because, say for example, you have a first-time buyer buying their first property.
Yeah.
Now, maybe they're buying a flat.
Yeah.
For example, a small flat. The person who is selling that flat may have received a bonus at work and they're buying a larger property. Let's create a short example and say that the person who owns that property has lived there for 40 years and wishes to move into a retirement home. Now, you can have many, many other transactions in that chain. What I've just described is a chain of transactions. Each one of those transactions is dependent on the other one going through. So if somebody has a change of circumstances, for example, they lose their job, or they decide they're not going to move into a retirement home, but a son will move in to look after them, then that means the chain is broken. And that means that everything is delayed until the chain can be fixed and somebody else can be found to take the place of the person who's pulled out.
That's
Does that
very
make
helpful.
sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, like I've seen many examples, you know, for friends and family, or even for my case, buy a property, and that really delay a lot of time. It can be.
Absolutely, and people can just change their minds. They may find a better property they like, or maybe one that's the same at a lower price. And the point is, until exchange of contracts, nobody has any obligation. Sometimes an estate agent, particularly for a new build property, may ask you to pay what they call a deposit, £1,000-2,000, just to them to take it off the market. They'll say this is securing you the property.
Yeah.
It isn't doing anything of the sort, because the seller is not obliged to sell it to you, even though you've paid a deposit, until you've instructed solicitors, they have carried out all their searches and inquiries, and you exchange contracts. Only when you exchange contracts are you bound to go through to completion. So you do have situations where people pull out on the morning of exchange of contracts, when the whole chain falls apart.
So
everyone's...
I think it's slightly different in Hong Kong, but you just said there's no obligation at all until you actually sign the final deed. Am I right?
Not the final deed. It's a 2-stage process in the UK. You have exchange of contracts, which is when your solicitor has carried out all of their inquiries and they've received all of the replies and they're happy with the replies. And then they'll prepare a report for you, which describes the property and what the various obligations attached to that property are. After that, you can safely exchange contracts. Until you exchange contracts, you can just walk away with no obligation.
Until the exchange of contracts. So from
Yes, at any point.
So can we just take a step back? Let's say someone from Hong Kong. A main question I like to ask is, they are foreign overseas buyer with a overseas passport, is there any special requirement for them to buy the property? Do they have to have a UK bank account, or do they have to be on a UK tax authority, having like some kind of registration in the local tax authority department?
It is usually very helpful to have a UK bank account because most firms of solicitors will insist that the funds are sent to them from inside the European Economic Area. And that's only the case until the end of this year. After that, it will probably just become from inside the UK, subject to whatever deal we reach with Europe. Until December 2020, funds can be sent from anywhere inside the EEA, European Economic Area, without the solicitor having to carry out lengthy inquiries as to the source of funds. If they've been sent from Hong Kong or China, then of course you're going to have to answer all sorts of questions, and the solicitor may still take a view that they can't really do this comfortably. So many will refuse to accept funds from outside the European Economic Area.
So what can I do? Let's imagine if I'm just giving you an example, maybe just if I'm a client, and so that let's say it's the beginning of July right now, I have 500,000, and I will say I'd like to buy 4 property with that £500,000.
Yes.
What is my process to do? What is my first step? Do I look for property first? Sorry.
Well, I would say if you walk into a firm of solicitors and say I have £500,000, I would like to buy 4 properties, then almost certainly the money laundering alarm bells will start ringing, and they will start asking all sorts of questions. And the reason is,
it's very common.
Not that every person who buys a property is a criminal, but simply this is a very popular way for criminals to launder their money by buying property. And the onus is placed upon the solicitors in the UK to try and stop that happening. So we are under obligations to check the source of funds.
How do you check the source of funds?
Well, we have to ask the client for proof of the source of funds. We have to carry out such investigations as we think appropriate to verify that.
Quite often, our client will be, they just sold a property from Hong Kong. Yeah. That could be the proof, right?
I'm not talking about seeing the property. I'm talking about proving where the money comes from.
Yeah, they would have sold a property of their own in Hong Kong.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
in that case, it's very simple because I assume you involve attorneys in Hong Kong property law. You'll have to educate me on the process in Hong Kong, because I'm afraid I don't know. And that we'll be able to seek verification from them.
And I also have clients probably have that fund as a saving in the bank account.
In which case we can ask to see statements, which show the money going in and the fact that it's still there.
And would you need it like income proof?
No, that is more the case if you're getting a mortgage. All the solicitor is really concerned with is that the person can pay their fee. And these are tiny compared to estate agents' fees when you come to sell a property, and also compared to the value of the property itself. So, that's really not so much a concern for us. It is a concern for anyone who might wish to lend you the money to buy the property, such as a mortgage lender, because they will obviously want to make sure you can afford the property. And at the moment, where obviously there's significant economic volatility, they have to take account of the possibility that prices may go down as well as up. So they have to make sure that you can afford the property in all circumstances.
So in Portugal, to open a bank account as an overseas person, you must have something called a tax number. Obviously, yes. I know that we don't need that in UK, right?
No.
But to open a bank account in Portugal as an overseas person, not only you need a tax number, you also need some kind of work permit or to prove that you have a job or some kind of income. What do they need in UK, like to open a bank account?
It varies from one bank to another, and I have not been able to fathom any rationale behind why one bank will accept a customer and another may not. I do know that I have some overseas clients who've had considerable difficulty setting up bank accounts in the UK.
Really?
Primarily from the Middle East, I must say.
Yeah, but from Hong Kong, so I don't know how. I don't
know how this relates to Hong Kong. Of course, you have Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation.
Right. HSBC. That I thought immediately people would think, because they most probably have a HSBC bank account in Hong Kong, they would think it's kind of easy to have one in UK. I don't know.
In theory, yes. Although the one of the clients I was talking about did have an HSBC account, and they tried to passport him to a London branch, and the London branch wouldn't accept him. So it's not guaranteed.
Seriously. And
Yes.
if you cannot open a bank account, what can you do? I mean, do you try a different bank?
Well, you can't use your solicitor's client account because we're forbidden from providing banking services. So you would simply have to shop around until you would find somebody. I think you'd be entitled to ask why the bank had refused to let you open an account.
So,
And I think given that a lot of wealthy people are coming from Hong Kong and they can see why they're coming from Hong Kong, perhaps they wouldn't be as suspicious as they would be in other circumstances.
okay. So your service cannot be helping them to open a bank account.
It's not something we do. We're lawyers rather than bankers. And
because
opening a bank account.
The Portuguese lawyer do help Hong Kong personnel to open bank accounts.
Oh, really?
Yes, as a service. And obtaining tax number, which that's two main things that they need to purchase a property.
Well, it's comparatively easy to obtain a national insurance number over here, which is what you need in order to be able to take up employment. You simply apply for one. And your immigration status has no bearing on whether or not you receive one, as far as I understand.
No bearing?
When it comes to, sorry? No bearing on your immigration status. You simply apply for a national insurance number. Anyone who wants one, they're given one.
Because most people would think, sorry, to be naive, most of my clients or viewers would think to get a national insurance number means you are literally entitled to the free healthcare and free education. Sorry, it's actually very naive.
There's laws in my area, which is property law. What I would say to that is people tend to send their children to school, and people tend to go to hospitals to seek medical treatment, and people tend to accept them there.
Okay.
And perhaps the checks aren't as onerous as it might be in some other countries. I don't think I can really say much more than that.
Okay, I see. Yeah, I understand.